Welcome to episode 1 of the Token Intelligence podcast. This is actually our third attempt at recording the first episode.
1.3. Episode 1.3.
Yes. So that means it's going to be 3 times as good, right?
Yep. So we're just happy to be here at this point.
We are happy to be here. It's been a journey of audio-visual testing and tweaking that we wanted it to be great on the first round. Yeah. Okay. Fun show planned today. We are going to talk about a college commencement speech that's 80 years old, which references a Tolstoy book.
Yes.
So we're going way back in history. Then we're going to fast forward and try to figure out how some of the principles in the commencement speech apply to AI and FOMO today.
It's going to be fun.
So Back to the Future.
Back to the... And then don't forget, to kick it off, we've got a little startup side.
Oh, yes.
What are we going to call it? I don't know. We'll come up with a cool name for it.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to invent a startup.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about mental models, and then we're going to do tool time and talk about Zo.computer, which will be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
All right, so let's dig in. Before we get to the commencement speech and delve into history, you wanted to try and invent an AI startup, live.
Right.
And so you have a question for me, and I'm going, I guess, what is this game? I'm going to try to create a startup based on a prompt from you.
Yeah. So I think we're going to do it a couple of different ways.
Pun intended.
Yes. So this version of it, we're going to do a prompt. I think in subsequent episodes, we may go through and just like keep going with it until it dies. And then we'll have an episode where we declare it dead and then we'll start a new one. Great. I think that would be fun.
Okay.
And some of them we'll just have to end earlier than others.
Right. We're going to crash land.
Yeah.
This is great. We're just being vulnerable in front of our audience.
Right.
All right. I also love that I'm the one who's the chosen.
Yeah. That was why I came up with the idea first.
I'm tribute. I'm tribute. Okay. Right. I can invent a startup.
Awesome. Okay. So, and we have to have fun constraints. Like you can't just have
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So constraint number 1 is AI startup. Not much of a constraint. 2 is
not much of a constraint. Well, I mean, that depends, but okay.
Yeah. 2 is it has to be a screenless device. So you can't just make an app.
Hardware.
It has to be screenless.
Hardware.
I'm not going to say it has to be hardware, but I don't know how to do it any other way.
Okay.
All right.
I like that. Okay.
Screenless. And 3 is we're going to start from the name. So you're going to name the startup, and then you're going to back into the screenless thing, probably a device. All right.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Ready. Wait, what's the cap table look like before we get going here? Because if this actually is a breakout success.
Yeah, good point. We should open up a Google Sheet and spend hours on that before we even name it.
Before we name the startup. Okay. We'll see how good the idea is. But am I majority owner? That's what I'm trying to figure out here.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, whoever names it, right?
Whoever names it. Okay. So a screenless AI startup screenless device. So this is stream of consciousness startup creation.
Okay, I'm ready.
There are a limited number of ways to interact with a device like that.
True.
So one is auditory.
Right.
So there's a speaker and it either emits sound or you are speaking to it or both.
Right.
It could be, and then the other category I would say is, 2 other categories come to mind, okay? Just off the cuff. One is some sort of sensor.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, there's like gyroscopic sensors. I mean, the iPhone has a lot of crazy stuff like this, right?
True.
Speed, motion, whatever. And then the last one would be that, is some sort of it performs some sort of function, which is kind of sensor-esque, but I'm just thinking about like the Theragun, muscle relaxer. Is there an AI play, based on that?
I mean, maybe.
Those are the categories that I'm thinking of. Am I missing anything?
I'm going to have to be careful drinking coffee during this portion of the show so I don't spew it all over the electronic equipment.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think you're missing anything major.
Right.
I think that
Those are
there's
my options.
There's like the IoT play, right? Where video input or audio. I think you could still call it screenless and have a video input technically.
That's true.
But
I feel like that's a little bit cheating.
Okay. Or you could go with, some
I want this to be different. I want a hard problem because if,
it's a startup. That's what startups are for.
That's exactly right. Okay.
You're not just going to build a wrapper.
I'm not just going to build a wrapper, which we should talk about at some point. The data around GPT-4 wrappers. Lots of them. I'm going auditory.
Okay.
Because I feel like the applications for that are pretty wide. And
audio like input.
I'm just going audio.
Okay. All right.
We'll get there.
All right.
We'll get there. But I need to name it first, right?
Yeah,
That's the thing? Okay. Let's call it Lobe, which is okay. I think there are two things here that I really like. One is that it's a somewhat ambiguous term.
Yep.
Lobe.ai. What does that mean? I don't know. But you also have an earlobe, which is
true.
Which is a nod towards the auditory nature.
Right.
So I have an AI startup called Lobe that has a screenless device that's focused on auditory.
Checking if Lobe.ai is available.
Okay,
but
perfect.
Continue.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, what's next, though? So I named it.
You named it, and the constraints. So, yeah, what does it do?
What does it do?
Or who is it for? Ideally both.
It's a consumer product, so we can start with an ICP, and we'll start with an ICP because you obviously want to be very focused on a specific use case when you go to market.
For sure.
But it's a consumer product, so it'll be very widely applicable.
Okay.
And it is going to focus on, so it's a listening device.
Okay.
So it is a passive listening device.
Okay.
This is hard, by the way.
Device.
I can't wait to do this to you. It's a passive listening device.
So an active listening device would be, and we might look at one of these actually later on the show, but something that's always listening. And passive, you mean there's like an activation word, or it only listens at certain points?
No, I'm thinking active is more along the lines of an Alexa or a Google Home.
Oh, okay. Oh, because it's always listening for for a keyword or whatever.
It's Siri, right? You say, "Hey Siri." And
okay. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Maybe that's not the right terminology.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is passive. You don't actually initiate its listening.
Okay.
Which I think will make adoption a lot easier.
Gotcha.
And the main utility for this is passive listening while you're sleeping.
Okay.
Right?
Ready.
Because you have all these, you have the market for listening during the day is
saturated.
It's so saturated.
Completely.
I mean, you have granola, Notion AI notes, all of these things. So saturated.
Yep.
Right. So we want to go after a market where, there's a lot of greenfield opportunity for passive listening screenless devices.
And we have a very defined ICP. That's the sleep talkers, right?
Wow. Okay, you're jumping. This is my startup.
Sorry.
This is my startup. But yes. So did you ever use that iPhone app called Sleep Score? No. Sleep score. I can't remember. It's an iPhone
Was
app.
it like linked to some kind of device or just an app?
No, so you would turn this thing on,
Okay.
and it kind of is the similar concept, right?
Okay.
Where it would actually record audio.
Really?
Did you not use this? It's really
No.
interesting. Okay.
Do you like sleep with it under
I think
your
it's called
pillow
Sleep
or
Score.
something?
No, you just like set it next to your bed.
Okay.
Which,
all right.
I don't know the veracity of this.
Yeah.
How close
You don't
is
know
it?
about the science or the clinical studies?
Exactly.
All right.
But it would record, part of it at least was recording audio, and you could just,
Right.
and it would give you, your quality of sleep and, were you snoring and, all those sorts of things.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a new AI screenless device, riff on that. Because I think the app was fairly popular. I think a number of people used it. My dad used it,
Okay.
and he wanted to compare sleep scores for a while.
Sure.
Okay, but this goes a step further. So, of course, you can connect this to your, fitness and sort of, fitness devices, right?
Yeah, like a Fitbit or a Ring.
Right. All, your biometric trackers, right?
Right.
Or a Ring, Fitbit.
Apple Watch, whatever.
Yes, I use a Garmin, whatever. Okay. So it has direct integrations with all of those. Or it will after we raise our seed.
Yeah, right.
Our seed round. So you can connect it with that. So it is consuming your biometric data as you sleep, but the big thing is the auditory component where when you, and this is actually a key to the integration with your biometric tracking, is that when you enter REM sleep, that's when it starts recording, because that's generally when you dream.
Okay.
Okay? And that's usually the most restorative sleep, right?
Okay. Right.
If you sleep for 8 hours and you get 10 minutes of REM sleep, it's not as high quality sleep, right?
Right.
And you usually dream during REM sleep. So we're going after the sleep that matters the most, which is REM sleep.
Yeah.
And that's usually when you dream.
Yep.
And a lot of people sleep talk when they dream.
Okay.
So I'm just going to live pitch this to you really quick.
I'm ready.
Lobe.
Right.
So have you ever, you wake up and you sort of have that dream residue, and maybe you're getting breakfast ready or you're making coffee, and you tell your wife, like, I had the craziest dream, and you try to explain to her what you dreamed about.
Right.
And it's really hard because dreams are weird. They make sense in your head. Even after you wake up, you feel like you have it there, and then you try to explain it, and it's very fragmented, right?
Well, there's also a rapid decay factor here.
Rapid
where
decay.
If you tried to explain it 5 minutes after, 20 minutes after,
Totally.
2 hours after, and then there's at some point where like it's pretty much impossible. So
Right.
I think that
Totally. So Lobe solves that problem for you.
okay. Problem I didn't know I had.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's
Like every good startup.
innovation. That's
Yep.
actually that's real innovation, right? Did
Right.
people ask Steve Jobs for an iPhone?
No.
They didn't.
No.
Okay. So you wake up, you have that dream residue, you immediately start telling Lobe about your dream, what you remember of it, okay? And it takes both the passive recording
Okay.
and the biometric data, and it completes your dream for you. So you have, it tells you what your dream was. So it's taking the fragmented, stream of consciousness that you're trying to give it right when it's fresh, and then combining it with the other data to tell you what your actual dream was. And so that's what Lobe does. So when you go pour that cup of coffee, you can give your wife a very articulate account of what you dreamed. Or you can both just, have coffee and listen to your Lobe.
Okay.
And then, if she has a Lobe that sits on the nightstand, next to her bed, that can be something that you share.
Okay.
So it's really driving deeper relationships.
Right. So that's the ultimate.
It's really driving deeper relationships.
Okay. And then so I think there's some interesting components here. What if you want to know what the dream means?
I am so glad you asked about that because dreams are weird. You know, there can be a lot of day residue in dreams. I actually am I have a lot of day residue. I think I over-index for that.
Okay.
Where you like redream things that happened during your day,
Oh,
but like
sure.
in a different way.
Yeah, sure. And then you don't even know what reality is.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
it's kind of weird. I took a psychology class in college, and the teacher was fascinating. She was a sleep expert and was like one of the foremost sleep experts in the military.
Wow.
Like trying to understand sleep. And so we actually, it was just an intro psychology course, but she taught us an amazing amount about sleep. And I was like, day residue, like that's actually.
Yeah.
So that's a paid feature, and that's how we're going to make money.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Monthly subscription.
Exactly. It's a monthly subscription for dream interpretation. You know, and so that's actually how we make money. Because, of course, you hear your dream, and it's not going to make complete sense because dreams are weird. And so you want an interpretation of that dream, and Lobe will give you an interpretation of the dream, you know, for a small fee. What would you be willing to pay for that, by the way? Just doing some little market research
Market research for Lobe. So I imagine there's a upfront hardware cost. Like, you know, you got to buy the thing. And then there's a monthly subscription.
We're still working out the go-to-market on that because you can subsidize the hardware with the subscription, and that can be a loss leader for acquisition.
Okay.
But we're still...
All right. So you're just talking about like the monthly interpretation fee.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'd want a free trial because I feel a little skeptical.
Definitely you're getting a free trial.
But let's say you like really impressed me and I was like, wow, that was like a really deep insight into my dream. I don't know.
I think the free trial actually needs to run for a certain number of interpretations because as you build because you know people often dream the same thing.
Recurring dreams,
right?
Sure, yeah.
So the free trial actually is designed to obtain enough material for it to, you know, start to do pattern matching and
right.
Okay, and then, you know, of course, from there, the different plans you can, you know, you can connect it to, you know, Sora or other tools, Nano Banana, and you can generate images or even a video of your dream.
For additional fees? Those are like the Pro and Plus plans.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in all seriousness, would be that would be the type of thing that you would like share with your friends, where it's like, okay, here's a Sora video. Okay, I wake up, I speak to Lobe, it generates a complete picture of my dream, and then generates a Sora video of it. You would share that with your friends because it would be hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I think
disturbing.
Sure, but I think it opens up an entire channel that we should talk about when we talk about go to market. So I'm not going to say no.
Okay.
Some partner channels.
Ooh. Okay, what do you think?
Okay,
how did I do?
I pay for
that was more difficult than I thought.
Yeah.
Also, constraints were brutal.
I was going to say, I mean, pretty good for the constraints for sure.
I appreciate that.
The constraints are rough because. You went down a nice creative path. You didn't try to invent what Sam Altman and Johnny Ive are trying to do, which, that's the obvious.
It's niche. Path. Oh, 8 Sleep, the mattress company, is another integration.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, what was the study that came out recently? Only a third of Americans say they get enough sleep. That's a big problem.
Oh, here's another fun one.
That's the TAM.
Yeah. There you go.
66% of Americans.
That seems low. There's another fun one that was even higher. I don't remember the percentage, but it was if you had an extra, I don't know, X number of hours per month, let's say 5 or 10 or something, what would you do with it? And I think a high percentage, like 70 or 80% said sleep.
Oh, wow.
So you can add that to your investor deck.
That's great. We need to... our listeners are probably like, okay, let's move on here.
Right.
But
It was a solid 20 minutes.
that was, yeah. Did I sprinkle in enough believable, Silicon Valley terminology?
I mean, pretty good. I think
Okay.
you could have gone heavier, though.
Okay. Okay.
There's always room
That
for
was,
improvement.
I did just create a startup live. We're going to do more reps on this.
Yeah, we'll get better.
Yes. And I cannot wait to return the favor.
It's going to be brutal.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about a commencement speech. This is actually, I think, so I can't remember where I found this. Someone actually told me about this. Actually, a scholar, I do remember. Now,
Okay.
if I told Lobe this, I would have already, I would have known this.
Yeah.
A scholar who was part of an institute that studies C.S. Lewis. I didn't tell you this.
No, I don't know this backstory.
Okay, yeah, I just remembered this because I was trying to remember where I found this college commencement speech. So let's tell our listeners. The commencement speech is over 80 years old, 1944. So during World War II,
Yep.
C.S. Lewis, who's a famous author, probably most well known for the Chronicles of Narnia children's book series. He did a lot of stuff, publicly. He was a BBC radio guest,
Yep.
during World War II. So he did a lot of different stuff.
Professor at Oxford, right?
One of the colleges at Oxford, I don't
Yeah.
remember the
Right.
new college, maybe. There's a lot of colleges. There are a lot of
Right.
colleges within Oxford. And so he gave a commencement speech for a graduating class at King's College
Yes.
in 1944. And so, yeah, so there's a guy who I know who was part of an institute that sort of studied C.S. Lewis because he was super prolific. And I can't remember what we were talking about, but he mentioned this speech. And so I went and read it, and it had a profound impact on me. And I think shortly after I shared it with you
Yeah.
and a number of other friends because
Right.
it was just a very, very, it had a profound impact on me. And when we were talking about the first episode of the show, in addition to just riffing and being silly, like we just did for 20 minutes, we thought that the inner ring was a good, really a good calling card for the show in many ways, for a couple reasons. I think one is that the sort of core principles that it teaches, I think we hold very close to heart as people who work on, sort of the let's say the cutting edge of technology, especially with AI, who are trying to navigate that in a way that, we can apply wisdom and principles, to both our professional life and, our personal life. And then I think that there's also this other side of the term we've been using is analog trust, where,
Yeah.
that AI didn't exist, in 1944, and these are sort of timeless principles. And so we both have had a desire to sort of explore tech topics, using sort of maybe more fundamental, historically time-tested,
Yeah.
principles of wisdom. So I had this crazy idea of reading a very large portion of this commencement speech on the show.
It's not the whole thing, but you might not believe us.
It's not the whole thing. So let's read this. Let's talk a little bit about it, and then I want to actually just live apply it to where we live today, especially as it relates to AI. And we can talk about some of our text message
Yes.
exchanges.
Oh, and we can talk. We've got a framework, a modern framework here
Yes.
that we can talk about
Yes.
as well. So that'll be fun.
All right. Buckle up. We're going to read selected quotes from The Inner Ring by C.S. Lewis. This is a commencement speech from King's College, Oxford, 1944. And I'll go ahead and say the first part of it is a quote from a Tolstoy passage. So we're just going to start out with the Tolstoy quote. When Boris entered the room, Prince Andrei was listening to an old general, wearing his decorations, who was reporting something to Prince Andrew with an expression of soldierly servility on his purple face. "All right, please wait," he said to the general, speaking in Russian with a French accent which he used when he spoke with contempt. The moment he noticed Boris, he stopped listening to the general, who trotted imploringly after him and begged to be heard, while Prince Andrew turned to Boris with a cheerful smile and a nod of the head. Boris now clearly understood what he had already guessed, that side by side with the system of discipline and subordination which were laid down in the army regulations, there existed a different and more real system. The system which compelled a tightly laced general with a purple face to wait respectfully for his turn while a mere captain like Prince Andrew chatted with a mere second lieutenant like Boris. Boris decided at once he would be guided not by the official system, but by this other unwritten system. That's the end of the Tolstoy quote. In the passage I have just read from Tolstoy, the young second lieutenant, Boris, discovers that there exist in the army two different systems or hierarchies. The one is printed in some little red book, and anyone can easily read it up. It also remains constant. A general is always superior to a colonel, and a colonel to a captain. The other is not printed anywhere, nor is it even a formally organized secret society with officers and rules which you would be told after you had been admitted. You are never formally and explicitly admitted by anyone. You discover gradually, in almost indefinable ways, that it exists and that you are outside it, and then later, perhaps, that you are inside it. Badly as I may have described it, I hope you will all have recognized the thing I am describing. Not, of course, that you have been in the Russian army, or perhaps in any army, but you have met the phenomenon of an inner ring. You discovered one in your house at school before the end of the first term, and when you had climbed up to somewhere near it by the end of your second year, perhaps you discovered that within the ring there was a ring yet more inner, which in its turn was the fringe of the great school ring to which the house rings were only satellites. It is even possible that the school ring was almost in touch with a master's ring. You were beginning, in fact, to pierce through the skins of an onion. And here, too, at your university, shall I be wrong in assuming that at this very moment, invisible to me, there are several rings, independent systems or concentric rings present in this room? And I can assure you that in whatever hospital, inn of court, diocese, school, business, or college you arrive after going down, you will find the rings, what Tolstoy calls the second or unwritten systems. The quest of the inner ring will break your hearts unless you break it. But if you break it, a surprising result will follow. If in your working hours you make the work your end, you will presently find yourself all unawares inside the only circle in your profession that really matters. You will be one of the sound craftsmen, and other sound craftsmen will know it. This group of craftsmen will by no means coincide with the inner ring or the important people or the people in the know. It will not shape that professional policy or work up that professional influence which fights for the profession as a whole against the public. Nor will it lead to those periodic scandals and crises which the inner ring produces. But it will do those things which that profession exists to do, and will in the long run be responsible for all the respect which that profession in fact enjoys, and which the speeches and advertisements cannot maintain. And if in your spare time you consort simply with people you like, you will again find that you have come unawares into a real inside, that you are indeed snug and safe in the center of something which, seen from without, would look exactly like an inner ring, but the difference is that the secrecy is accidental, and its exclusiveness a byproduct, and no one was led thither by the lure of the esoteric. For it is only 4 or 5 people who like one another meeting to do things that they like. This is friendship. Aristotle placed it among the virtues. It causes perhaps half of all the happiness in the world, and no inner ring can ever have it. We are told in Scripture, that's the Bible, that those who ask get. That is true in senses I can't now explore. But in another sense, there is much truth in the schoolboy's principle, them as asks shan't have. To a young person just entering adult life, the world seems full of insides, full of delightful intimacies and confidentialities, and he desires to enter them. But if he follows that desire, he will reach no inside that is worth reaching. The true road lies in quite another direction. It is like the house in Alice Through the Looking Glass. Selected quotes from The Inner Ring.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was a long passage. Also, I got to say, enters thither through the lure of the esoteric, which we could
Dream sentence.
dream sentence. We've joked about the word thither a lot in the 3 recordings that we've done getting to this.
That's a great read through. When you do it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
it does get better.
totally. I
Yeah.
do feel like that got better. Mm-hmm. Okay, a couple things that I want to talk about. So, this idea of the inner ring, I think, is something that I really appreciate that C.S. Lewis puts words to this, because it's something that we all experience.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times is very hard to describe, but it's something that you sense. Mm-hmm. So maybe let's dig into... Actually, I'll just start with a very direct question. Okay? Since you made me create a startup.
Oh, no. Payback.
Okay, when did you experience an inner ring? The first inner ring that you thought, I actually really want to be part of that. You sort of felt the desire well up in you. Because if I go back, to a young person entering on adult life, the world seems full of insides, full of delightful intimacies and confidentialities, and he desires to enter them. And so I think it's one thing to look at these inner rings objectively and say, okay, those exist, right?
Right, sure.
But it's another thing to actually come face to face with one and realize that you actually really desire to enter it.
Right.
Do you remember your first experience of that?
Yeah. So I think first, I think they develop at a certain age and don't really exist before then. I don't know when. So I think that's interesting. If you really small kids don't have these.
Right.
And then I would say for me, probably around middle school, maybe late elementary school.
Middle school inner rings.
Right. But that's the first, I don't know if you remember any before then personally, but that's my first memory. And so Eric and I both grew up in the Carolinas. Mm-hmm. And something, especially when we were young, that was really, really big is soccer. I don't know if...
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, we didn't know each other, but that was just something big in the area. So I played a little bit, but not super competitively.
Yep.
And around middle school, that was really picking up. And a lot of people I was in school with, people that I knew started doing it more competitively. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I kind of stayed at the casual level.
Right. Yeah, there was. I mean, huge travel leagues.
Yeah, travel league school, the schools would have, there's travel leagues and school teams, and then there was the recreational leagues. Yep. And I was more of a recreational league player than a travel.
Same here.
So that's my first memory, I would say, of as that developed, and people around me were doing travel and the school leagues, and kind of progressing and getting better, which shows up at recess or shows up at when they're in their off season playing recreational, and you are in the skill gap grows, right? Because they've spent whatever traveling or doing whatever, and then they come back and do their off season rec, and you're on the team too, and you're like, wow, they're way better than me. Yeah, that's probably the first.
Oh yeah, they come back to they play rec league to
because they have their season where they're doing their travel thing or their school thing, and then they come back in their off season, and then you can end up on the same team, right, in this off season thing, and you didn't have the reps. Yep. And then the skill gap. Even more, and you're like, oh.
Totally. Okay.
That's what comes to mind. First thing. What about you?
That's a great question. I would say similar experience. The middle school, high school inner ring. There are the cool kids in high school, who, whatever. It's,
So you're thinking from like a social perspective?
Yeah, more of a social perspective. I mean, the sports thing definitely.
That crosses into social, right?
It definitely.
Yeah.
Well, they're definitely interrelated, right? I think in the speech he calls it concentric, concentric rings.
Yeah, good point.
And so that definitely plays into it, but. Of course, like who's getting invited to this person's house,
sure.
for this person's birthday party. And that's just to some extent a representation of, are you in the inner ring, right? Or
sure.
whatever, there's a group going camping, those sorts of, those sorts of things.
Yep.
And so I think, you desire, you don't want to be lonely. You want to be accepted and valued. Right. And I think the thing that I wanted to explore a little bit is why do you think that group of the inner ring is so attractive? Because it's like there's other groups, right? I wasn't necessarily one of the like cool kids, as part of the in group. But you want to be part of that. And I think it's so interesting in the speech that C.S. Lewis really kind of says, this is a thing that you've all noticed, even if you haven't put a name on it. And B, your natural inclination is going to be to want to go there.
Right.
Right. And so there is a sense in which I'm not content with the soccer rec league. I'm not content with my whatever friend group that I'm in. I want to go, over to the party with, these cool kids or whatever. Why do you think that is? What is it in us that, has this desire to be on the inside?
It's a good question. I think everybody wants to be part of something. I think the absence of it, because there's really two things. There's one, feeling like you're in a circle but you want to be in a better circle, and there's another one, feeling like you don't have a circle at all and want to be in a circle. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because I think those are two different things.
Yep.
I think I'm not in a circle and I want to be in one ends up being more like nobody wants to be lonely. I don't want to be lonely. I don't, and I want to be part of this thing. The other one's actually a little more interesting, though. Or if you have friends and you are in a circle, but you want to be like in a better one. And that, I think, is more like envy or maybe competition.
Yep.
I do think they're a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, I think, let's play this out first in the context of the middle school, high school experience, and then professionally, right?
Yeah,
because I think that's where, I think that's...
it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away.
It just looks
a
little
changes,
bit different.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think one of the realizations that you have as you get older, so let's take the high school, middle school dynamic, right? So you have the cool kids, and then you have different groups, cliques, whatever you want, whatever, term you want to put on it, right? And they, you have maybe like the sports, you have like the varsity sports, sort of group. You have, maybe the smart kids, let's say, right? Sure. So they're in all the honor and AP classes, and, maybe debate club and, whatever, those sorts of things, right? Then maybe you have, all different types of groups of people who maybe feel like they don't fit into those categories, right?
Right.
And there's a bunch more. And of course, I'm heavily stereotyping, but I think most people will resonate with, the fault line sort of break, generally along those lines, right?
Well, and the average person is kind of more average in each of those things, and not necessarily extraordinarily smart or extraordinarily athletic, whatever. Yeah.
But I think one of the interesting things is that within each of those groups, it's the layers of the onion, right? Yeah. It's not like it's just the cool kids, That seems like sort of the most desirable one because of maybe what it gets you, right? Sort of like reputation or access or, whatever. But even within, let's say the debate club or AP classes, right? It's a grades thing, right? Or it's an achievement thing, right? And so within each one of these, there's just sort of an unending, layers of the onion where you go deeper and deeper.
Right.
And so what does that look like professionally? I think is
which is more
just
I think it changes. I can remember my first experience of this professionally, and I thought it would go away, to be honest.
Like when you enter the professional world, it's like, I'm leaving all this drama
I thought
behind.
we're all adults. Like, this is going to be like, everybody's going to be professional. Yeah.
Everyone's going to be professional.
I mean, like, people are people, but they'll be like professional at work, right? And they can do whatever they want in their own time. It'll be fine. Like, no, that's not reality.
Yep.
But yeah, my first experience that I can remember professionally was it feels different because you are all there. Maybe you're on different teams, but you're all there like for a mission, whether it's been articulated or not, right?
Yep.
It's a for-profit company to make money, essentially to make the company money.
Yeah.
So, but I remember, so it's just a little bit tighter where it feels like in school, like you can just have a little bit more diversity of groups. So I remember being at this job and being on the outside of the in group, because groups can form in weird ways. Like people, they like happen to get hired at the same time, and you're like the new person,
right?
Like that's really common.
Yep.
So then other people get hired, and you're not really the new guy anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a component. But I remember not at all being in the inner circle, being on the bubble, and then being in the inner circle and realizing there were more inner circles. I remember all three of those things, actually.
Okay, let me drill down into this because I love putting language to this thing that we all observe. Mm-hmm. You were not in the inner circle, and you realized there were more inner circles.
Yes.
What did the inner circle, sort of the first inner circle that you observed, what were the specific dynamics of that, right? Because I think there are a couple things at play here. One is that we all have this sense of wanting to belong and feel important. And I think that is, C.S. Lewis really picks up on that of like, you're going to be drawn to this, right? Intimacies, confidentialities, right? And I think those things, that represents a lot of things, but one major part of that when you think about the professional environment, right, is you're spending a huge percentage of your actual life at work,
right?
And there are, a lot of times your identity can be tied up in, your job, your success, whatever, right? And so the inner ring sort of represents this sort of sense of belonging, sense of importance, and sense of accomplishment, that can be very deeply personal. But what did the dynamics of that, and I think that's what attracts us, but what were the specific characteristics of the inner ring that you saw in terms of, was there some sort of currency inside the, like organizational currency that was created, decision-making ability? Maybe it can even often just be knowledge of things, right? Like I just have knowledge. There's a sense of like knowledge scarcity, where it's like, I know things even if, it doesn't necessarily translate to, specific decisions.
Right. Yeah. So I think a few things. One is the informal meetings, lunches, things like that happen where you're like, oh, okay, I noticed that I was not included on that. Got it. And it's often set up such that like I didn't need to be. Like I can do my job without being in on that conversation.
Right.
So it's not like a problem from affecting your execution of your work.
Right.
That was one component. But I think the inner ring component, but some of that was also hierarchy. Like I'm not X level. I'm an individual contributor at this job. Like the managers are having a meeting with whatever, other managers or they're super, whatever. So there's a component there. But the most interesting thing is when people that are at your similar level are kind of brought into things formally or informally. And you're like, like there's just kind of a feeling of like, oh, there are 5 developers at this company, and they all have the same title, and the one seems to get pulled into like more discussions or more important discussions, or gets more important work than the other ones. And then so that's like from a professional, and then there's kind of a social component which is just, I think, natural, where certain people are better friends with others, and there's just like a social component layered on at work, especially when you're co-located. I think remotely, I don't know if this plays out quite the same, but all of my first 3 jobs mostly were co-located with people.
Right.
So that's when I noticed, and part of it is sometimes it's easy to explain, well, I'm new, and like they're already friends, or they're already involved in this project, and I'm not. But I think it gets harder for people when you're like, I'm not new, you know what I mean? I'm
right.
Or I should be included in this, or I want to be included in this. That's where it gets harder.
Yeah. So would you say, so it sounds like, okay, the other developer gets pulled into these meetings, and so what the inner ring sort of in that case translated, because the other developer is at the same structural level as you as an IC, whatever title, comparable.
Yeah. Right.
The managers have a meeting, but they continue to pull this other person in. And so the inner ring in that case translates into influence, right? Like you have a deeper influence over the decisions that the managers are making because you're part of the inner ring as opposed to just the other developers.
Or you just end up on more important or less important projects.
Ooh, yeah. Yep.
Because if you've got 5 things that need to be done, and a lot of times it's clear that like, well, this is a high visibility important project, the other 4 are not, and who gets selected for the high visibility important project?
I think one of the things that's so challenging about this is the inner ring is professionally so often associated with the things that you desire professionally.
Okay.
Right? I want to work on the important project.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah. I want to progress in my career.
Right.
And working on the important project is an important part of progressing in my career.
Yeah.
Those aren't necessarily bad things. But in the speech, he's very clear that pursuing that will break your heart. Right. So let's dig into that. What does that look like? Trying to be part of the inner ring and getting your heart broken, what does that look like?
Yeah. Thinking back, one of them, I really kicked myself afterwards because at like 3/4 into one of these projects that I was not on, I realized like, oh, this is an important high visibility project, and I didn't even see it. So I wasn't even smart enough to try to get on this project. So that was one that like stung. And I don't know that I like would have or could have contributed much to the project, but that was one where I felt so naive of like, I didn't even see this coming.
Right.
So you feel kind of dumb.
You're like, the door is open to the inner ring and you're like, la la.
Right. So I'd completely missed it. But I saw this one developer walk through that door and be on that project, and I mean, really has made a big difference in his career to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So yeah, that's kind of what I was. Yeah. That's what I was. That's what I was getting at. When it's hard to dissociate the pursuit of the inner ring with actual material, impact on your career.
But the flip side of it. Yeah. So here's the flip side for me. So that comes and goes because projects always come and go. Then there's other things, and I do end up on some more high visibility things, get pulled into some like more important conversations, feeling good about yourself. So I'm kind of in that like first inner ring.
So you made it in. At this point, you've made it in.
Yeah, I thought. Then I realized that there's that inner ring, which, let's call it like 6 people or 8 people or something. But there was another one that was like 3 or 4 people that I was not part of, that I figured out a couple of months into that. And then never ended up being part of that one. So you very much see and feel the onion piece, Yeah.
What was the dynamic of the other? Okay, so you make it in the inner ring, you're working on important projects, you have much more influence. And then the 3 or 4 people who are on who are in the next level deeper, what are they doing? How did that translate?
Yeah. Some of it was just a social friendship. They were friends.
Okay.
I think outside of work as well, and I wasn't as much
Yep.
friends with them. So
Yep.
I think there's just a practical
That's a super real dynamic.
thing there. And I also think there was a practical, they all cared a lot about so they spent a lot of time on the like social interaction part of the job, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Not that they they had jobs and did them, but they spent a lot of time on this other piece. And I don't even know it was intentional. Mm-hmm. I do think there's just some people that are wired that are just so socially wired that they do naturally gravitate toward for example, wanting to be in meetings. I've never professionally wanted to be in meetings. Meetings are things you have when you need to have them, and there's other people that legitimately their default is
sure,
we should have a meeting about that.
100%.
That'd be great.
100%.
So there was just some. I was gonna say that's not necessarily wrong. I do feel like it's wrong, but it's probably not necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just a very simple perspective difference.
Yep.
That okay, you're not supportive of all our meetings. All right, you're not, and I'm not. Nobody probably actually thought that, but that could be one axis.
Yeah, totally.
What about you?
So, actually, I don't think I pulled this up on my computer, so I'm going to pull out my phone, which I feel like should be we should try to keep that rare. But there's let me pull up this episode. Okay. I'll try to do an abbreviated version of my thoughts on this. Okay, I found the podcast episode.
Excellent.
So I do feel on some level like I was given an opportunity to see inside a bunch of inner rings without necessarily seeking that early in my career.
Okay.
And so a lot of that was...
You say see inside. You didn't say necessarily be part of.
Or be inside.
Oh, okay.
Be inside without necessarily thinking that I was,
Inside.
Yeah. So, the first was with the Iron Yard where, I started a business with a couple guys and I had no experience as an entrepreneur. But the main guy I started with, he was a successful entrepreneur several times over. And so in many ways, he sort of just brought me and another guy into, let's call it the inner ring of being a founder and starting a company and all that sort of stuff, right? Which I think itself can be an inner ring,
Yeah, absolutely.
in communities, especially in a, actual, physical community or city, right? There's sort of even within San Francisco, there's sort of this founder, experience. Right. You have, YC founders, you have, all these inner rings, right? And so, but it's particularly acute in second tier markets like Greenville where we live, right? Where,
are we a second tier market now?
I don't know.
Okay.
And we're not big enough to be first tier.
I was thinking third.
Oh, third tier.
I don't know if there are 3 tiers. That's
a good question. I don't know. There's an inner ring of cities.
Yeah, I don't think we're part of it. We're working on it.
So I think that there was this. I got to do a lot of really interesting things through that experience, right? Raise capital, have a business that had physical locations, across the entire United States and even internationally. Yeah, so we launched one in London. We had partnerships with all these interesting companies. I got lunch with the founders of Zappos. Oh, so I actually got to meet Tony Hsieh before he passed away, which was really tragic. But I got lunch with him, and they were trying to build a talent pipeline, and so we were teaching people how to build software, which seems like a lifetime ago because that whole format, has basically gone away. And then we sold the company to a publicly traded company.
Right.
And so I got to go through the process of actually, having an exit as a founder. And I didn't realize it at the time, but, I had sort of, and I didn't really even know what I wanted to do with my career. I just had this opportunity and pursued it. And then the first bumping up against an inner ring, I think for the first time, was when I had an opportunity to go work for a Silicon Valley tech startup, like a venture-backed Silicon Valley tech startup, right?
Sure.
And so, there are lots of different things about the business that I had built previously and software, right? I mean, they're really fundamentally different business models. And even though we did, towards the end, actually build a SaaS, sort of a SaaS type model, but it was still education different.
Right.
And, I had an opportunity to go work for this super early stage company, pre-revenue.
Right.
And I remember telling my wife actually, and man, she gives me a hard time about this, which is great. She says these words back to me a lot. Now that I, have sort of been through the ringer, pun intended.
Right.
But as I was evaluating the opportunity, I thought, okay, well, I built a business here in the Southeast and, it's successful and all that sort of stuff. But, San Francisco, Silicon Valley is like the real deal. And I want to see if I can go play in the major leagues, which isn't necessarily untrue in many ways, right? With like venture money, we raised, it's just it is a different game out there, right? And yeah, so I did that, and then you realize, okay, well, it just is continuing to go through the onion, right? Because I started this early stage startup, and then it's like, okay, well, can I, survive through these different phases of scale in the startup, right? Because people who do really early stage stuff, aren't necessarily the right fit for later stage stuff as the company becomes more successful, right? Like, can I survive that? Do I have the ability to make these transitions, sort of from maker to manager, to whatever, right? To learn new skill sets, to do all of this remotely,
Right.
And I think I just realized that when I looked back on all that experience, I mean, I guess to summarize all of that, I would say, I had some unbelievable opportunities, even for a certain time period to report to the board, or to have, some level of board accountability, and to grow a significant amount of revenue for this company and sort of, all that stuff. And I realized, I realized that I had actually already previously accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish, right? It's just sort of the same thing in like a different context. And I started to realize that.
So you're saying you're realizing that wasn't that different than your previous experience, but you thought that it might be.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And I think because there's this mystery of the different context of the higher stakes of, all these sorts of things, right?
Do you think the stakes were actually higher though?
In terms of money, they were way higher.
There's a lot more money.
There's a lot more money.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
which raises the stakes for sure.
It raises the stakes a lot, and that's a very real thing, right? It's like, okay, I mean, there is, it's like, okay, well, if, people are putting a lot more money in, and the ability to make a lot more money if there's some sort of outcome is pretty significant. And so I would say that was like a material, that was a material difference just in terms of, if you become a unicorn, that could be a really big deal.
Yes.
But I mentioned this. Okay, so there are two things actually that come to mind. So one is that I saw I saw people around me who were deeper and deeper in the inner ring. And I think at this point I had a little bit more of an ability to be objective about that.
And you're even saying not just at the company, but also in the ecosystem.
In the ecosystem, investors,
Right.
Board members, et cetera.
Yep.
And I realized they're still chasing something, right? It's sort of this, everyone's still chasing, and people where it's like, I don't quite understand why you're still chasing this stuff, right? If you've sort of arrived. And so there's this interesting realization, and it actually came to a head. I was talking with a friend of mine who is a marketing leader in Silicon Valley, and they were talking about someone they knew at a very successful company. And, I said, yeah, I was trying to figure out, do you think they'll get acquired? Do you think they'll continue to raise more money? Do you think they'll try to go public? And, they were saying, I think that really the leadership really just wants to win. And I said, what does that mean?
Yeah, right.
Is there a material or like a tactical, tangible definition of that? And he said, I don't think there is, and so you just sort of keep pursuing, you sort of stay in the state of pursuit. Anyway, I sort of realized that. And then I listened to this podcast. Actually, it's, that's what I pulled up on my phone. So, the Knowledge Project, Shane Parrish, who's the guy behind the mental model stuff, which we'll talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Really great podcast. And this is an older one. It's from 2024. But the name of the podcast episode is Get Rich, Stay Rich. And the guest is Morgan Housel. Okay. And
I don't think I'm in the inner ring because I don't know who that is.
I didn't either.
Okay.
It's just completely random. I just mentioned it because we can put it in the show notes, and
Perfect.
the AI will make that easier.
Smart.
Transcribe it, yeah. But it's a great episode, and Morgan Housel seems like a very smart guy. Anyways, the episode's about the difference between becoming wealthy and staying wealthy, and how those are two very different skill sets, which is really interesting. But he makes this point. He asks the host, this is 2024, and I haven't listened to it in a while, but he asked the host, why do people want to make money? Why do people even want to be wealthy? Right? Which again, if we go back to the inner ring and why do you want to pursue the inner ring? Part of it is because you want to feel important. You want to feel a sense of belonging. You want to be in that social circle. You want to have more influence. You want your work to matter, etc.
Yep.
And then there's the structural component of, well, you can make more money. Right. And it's career advancement, as part of playing the politics of the inner ring. And he said, I've talked to a lot of people about, why are you pursuing, why do you want to be rich? And it's interesting. It kind of goes back to that, you want to win, what does winning mean? Right. What does being rich even mean? And that's actually kind of a difficult question to answer. Right. I want to, I don't think a lot of people in our sphere would say my goal in life is to be rich, right? But we are all pursuing professional success, right?
Right.
And he just said it so simply. He said, the majority of people that he talked to said what the whole reason that they want more money is so that they can essentially buy more time to spend with the people that they love. Right? He's like,
I was going to say freedom.
Yeah, freedom, right?
Because there's a perception out there that it's, well, clearly it's possessions, material possessions, or maybe experiences or something. But the one that I hear the most is freedom.
Yep.
To do what I want with my days, spend more time with people that I like,
Totally. And I think, all that to say, I said I was going to give an abbreviated version, but since we didn't really talk about that angle in the first two shows, so this is open territory.
Extended edition here.
Extended edition. I think I realized that when I heard that, I really took it to heart initially, and I thought more and more about it. And I think I realized that the fallacy of there are two major things that, as I reflect on that, I think about. The fallacy of the inner ring is that there is an end to it, that there is a destination,
Sure.
And so you stay in that constant state of pursuit because you pierce through one layer of the onion, and then you realize there's another, and then you realize there's another. And that really is never ending.
Right. But I think most people that are on that path, if you're honest with yourself, if they're honest with themselves, they don't want it to end.
Totally. I agree, but I'm interested in why do you think that is?
Because I think when you do it long enough, like you like it. You like the journey.
It's a game. Sure.
You like the game, exactly. Right.
Yep.
Like, because let's just use professional sports as an example. I don't think there's many professional athletes that retire and don't feel like the glory days were when they were playing. When they were getting up early, training hard, working hard on, a playoff run, whatever. And now that they have, depending on how they manage their money. Let's say this is an athlete that did a good job managing their money. Now they have complete freedom. Let's say this is like a really top tier athlete that never has to work again. So they have complete freedom now, do whatever they want with their time, spend as much time as they want with their family, and like sleep in, not train at all, do whatever they want with their body. I think all of them see the glory years as the time they were training, preparing, etc.
A couple of things there. I love that analogy, because you use the phrase, let's say this is a top tier elite athlete, right? There are so many inner rings on the way to that position.
For sure.
Right. And then, to your point, let's say you make it to whatever the perceived like deepest inner ring is, where you're super successful. You've had an objectively awesome career, which is so few athletes. And then you realize like, oh, the glory days were actually when I was trying to pierce through the different, layers of the onion. I think I'm going to go a step deeper into that. And I mean, this is on a very personal level, having been on some version of that journey myself. The other reason that that game or that pursuit is so appealing is that it's actually easier than doing the hard work of investing in the real relationships that are the reason you say that you're doing it. So, for example, right, like
that's great.
I'm working really hard, and this is deeply, this is something that I have processed a lot, really, over the last couple of years. Is when I joined that startup pre-revenue, I did a lot of homework to understand if there was a possible outcome. I mean, I knew it was risky, right? But the further we went in, it was like, okay, we sort of made it past these stages where it's like, well, half of startups don't get there, 80% don't get there, 90% don't get there, 95% don't get there, right? And so the likelihood of some future outcome becomes increasingly real.
Right.
And so when we think about, the inner ring sort of breaking your heart, I definitely went through that in that I really wanted that outcome because I wanted freedom, or so that's the story that I told myself so that I could spend more time with my family, and all that sort of stuff. But then I realized that, well, it's actually way easier to go to work and grind it out because I have, I'm sort of, despite all the other factors that go into this, right? I mean, work is hard and, figuring stuff out is hard and, politics are hard and, all these things that make these things like really difficult, right? But to your point about the athlete, it's like, okay, you take all of that away and it's like, well, actually spending time with the people you love and building those deep relationships is hard.
Right.
And takes a lot of investment and is emotionally exhausting. And so sometimes it's like, well, it's actually easier to just stay in this place where I'm really familiar and grinding it out, in a professional environment and getting better at, what I'm doing and adding skills and increasing the likelihood of some future outcome. But the reason that you say that you're doing that often is the thing that when you actually get that, you're like, oh, this is different than I thought, know?
So this was, I don't remember where I heard this, but I think it was in the context of fitness and like fitness professionals. And it was so interesting because the conversation was around discipline, right? Because I think for most people, like, wow, like that, look how disciplined that person is. They go to the gym every day, or they do, whatever. Like, and the person that was speaking, I think they were speaking to trainers or people that were really into fitness. And they were saying to this group, you're not that disciplined, actually, because you love doing that. You do it because you love it. Discipline is doing the things over and over again that you don't love.
Oh, right. Like you love going to the gym,
right,
for an hour and a half or 2
this
hours.
is your job. This is what you love. Like,
yeah,
this is your thing.
Wow.
There's actually not much of a discipline thing here. You're just doing it because you love it. I think that can be true with the startup thing or the work thing. Is from the outside, it's like, wow, like look how successful or whatever. It's like, if you're just doing something that you really love, that's not actually like, there's not actually like a lot of discipline as part of that.
Totally.
And I think a lot of the discipline, at least for me, is the context switching between working and being a parent, or between working and being a husband. Like that's way harder.
So much harder
than quote being disciplined, building a company, or whatever you do at work.
Totally.
So I thought that was really interesting because I think from the outside, especially when it's like an area that's not your thing, maybe it looks like, wow, look how disciplined they are. And it's like, no, they're not. Like, that's just what they do. They love doing that.
Totally. I was thinking about this recently. There's a lot of literature about love languages, right? And so like, how do you, speak to someone in their love language? It could be gift giving, it could be quality time, it could be, whatever.
Right.
And so if you really try to buckle down and be disciplined about applying that to your wife and children, for me, that's very hard because it doesn't come naturally.
Right.
It requires a lot of dedicated time and thought.
Right.
And it's harder than work.
Right.
It's harder than going to work.
Right.
So I want to steer the conversation towards like what the inner ring means with AI and FOMO today, but one more point. So I said two things as I reflected on it. One was there's no end to it, and sort of even if you get what you want, it's sort of, you still are more comfortable in the pursuit, than you are necessarily even getting what you want. But the other one is that it is the easiest thing in the world not to define enough, right? And you almost want to avoid that question if you are very comfortable in the pursuit, because then there's sort of a stopping point, and then you have to deal with, okay, well, what does that actually mean for my life?
Right.
And I've actually thought a lot about you in this situation because you decided I want to start. You were an executive at a company, C-level executive, and you could have gotten another, similar job, whatever, and sort of continued down that path. But I remember you saying, I wanted to start a business, and that meant that we had to sort of make sacrifices. And so we just sort of drew lines and said, like, this is enough, and this is how we're going to live our life, and we're going to at least try this for a while, And I respected that so much because it was just, you sort of drew those lines and you were like, this is it, And I don't know, that really, it made me think a lot about that. And I think the takeaway on that second point about enough is that I think the other lie of the pursuit of the inner ring and how it can break your heart is that you say that you're working towards something, you don't define enough, and in most situations, you can actually have what you want or some form of it immediately by making different decisions, right?
What do you mean by that?
So, like Morgan Housel says, okay, the reason that people say they want money, or like he says they want to spend more time with the people they love.
They could just do that now,
right? You said I want more. I'm pursuing this because I want more freedom, right? And for me, it was like, okay, well, if this startup that I'm a part of has an outcome, it'll give me professional freedom. I can spend more time with my family, fill in the blank. It was sort of all the things, right? And in reality, like you can just make life decisions where you get,
Right.
it's whatever. You're not necessarily going to retire immediately, right? But it's like, okay, well, you can make life decisions to say, I'm going to spend more time with my family right now.
Right.
I'm going to have more freedom right now. That means probably like things changing your life structurally. You go readjust your budget. You do whatever.
Yeah. And don't start a business if you want to spend more time with your family. Just saying.
That's a whole episode.
Right.
But I think that's the other thing, right? It's like, well, if you really want that, you can make changes and sort of get closer to that,
Yeah, almost any scenario, right?
almost any scenario.
There's a few more extreme ones with probably like professional sports or like being in the military or something.
Totally.
But for most people, yeah, and most people that I've interacted with, it is that we don't want to too tightly define the inner circle, the pursuit of the inner circle, or what the point is at all. But we do like to talk about, well, like things will be different like in a couple of years or 2 or 3 years. And then
so often.
Yeah.
Do you remember the guy that we interviewed on the previous podcast that we used to co-host? Do you remember the guy that we interviewed he worked at Pixar?
Yeah.
Or was it DreamWorks? One of the big studios.
One of the big studios. Brian Schwartz.
Brian Schwartz.
Yep.
Yes. Great memory. You didn't have to look it up on your phone. And I'm so weak.
It was I invited him. So I'm impressed
that's right.
That you remembered.
Yeah. Do you remember he said he was super successful. He worked at one of the big studios, brought several major movies to market. Kung Fu Panda, that sort of
There's a couple and several really big ones.
Yeah, huge ones. And then he went and ran like the front end of Expedia for a while. I mean, just, which is like a crazy shift. And so he had a career counselor mentor that he was talking to, and he said, my goal, he's like, okay, what do you want to accomplish? And he said, my goal is to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 company before I'm 30, right? I think it was before I'm 30.
Yeah. You have a better memory of this, but yes, it's coming back.
The career counselor just said, why? Like what?
Yeah.
Legitimately, like why do you want to do that? What are the driving factors? And it just undid him because he couldn't answer. He didn't actually have an answer.
Which is such a wise question, because mine would be, wise question. No, you don't.
Totally.
But yeah, it's a way better question.
And I believe that after reflecting on it, he came back to the guy and he said, I don't really have a good reason for this. Right. And the guy said, well, then maybe you shouldn't pursue that if you don't have a good reason, because it's not like that's a neutral cost pursuit, in your life. So anyways, that's a good example. Okay, FOMO and AI and the inner ring.
Time for the AI part?
Yes. And anything else to say on the inner ring?
I think I can tie this into AI a little bit, but I was not aware of this theorem, which I texted you.
Oh,
and
yes,
I will share, and I think this is a perfect segue into the AI stuff.
Yeah. Okay, are you going to share your screen?
Yeah.
This is such a great
I didn't know this was a thing, and we didn't pre-discuss, so this will be fun.
Doing it live. Yeah. This is great.
This is a screenshot I took from Google or Gemini or something, where I had to look this thing up because it came across. Yeah, came across. I don't know how I saw it originally, but I had to Google it because I didn't know what it was. So this is called the PI theory, performance image exposure. I'll just read the headline. The PI theory explains career success through 3 key elements: performance, image, and exposure. And listen to these percentages. Performance, 10%. Image, 30%. Exposure, 60%. And then performance, I think, is pretty clear what that means. Image means your personal brand and how colleagues perceive your professionalism, reliability, and alignment with company values. And then exposure, if you don't know what that means, visibility to key decision makers through networking, showcasing achievements, and strategic self-promotion. Again, the percentage breakdown: exposure 60%, image 30%, performance 10%. Which the definition of performance: your ability to deliver results and meet job expectations.
This is baseline for career progression.
Wow, reactions to that?
It is there are absolutely exceptions to this.
Right.
I have two thoughts.
Okay.
There are absolutely exceptions to this, but by and large, I have observed this to be the general breakdown that I have seen. The general breakdown of, what comprises the percentage ingredients that go into career growth or success or whatever you want to call it, right? And there are a couple reasons for that, I think. Some good and some bad, and some just reality. So one of them is very simple. Executives are super busy.
Right.
Executives or people high up in an organization are super, super busy. And so they just, there's more happening and more areas of responsibility they have that they can practically give 100% of their attention to in a given period of time. And so on a very practical nature, just getting more, if you figure out a way to get more exposure to those people, you're in their orbit more.
Right.
And so, and that tends to build trust. And so if there's something that needs to be done or someone who needs to be recommended for a key project or whatever, then they're just more likely to reach for you because it's a less risky, it's a less risky option.
Right.
So that's one. I think the other, so let's say that's on the very practical. I think this is just generally true,
right.
Side of things. And there can be negative things about that. There can be negative manifestations of that. There can be nepotism. There can be, the social aspect with your friends, where it's not a true meritocracy, et cetera.
Right.
The middle ground is where I would say, if you assume that within a certain threshold, people within a given discipline, have somewhat fungible skill sets.
Okay.
Then exposure really does make a huge difference.
Okay.
Right? Because, again, this is not...
So performance being equal, roughly same skill sets.
Right.
What's the next determining factor?
Right.
Exposure.
It's exposure,
okay.
Right? And so I would say that's a reason that I think mathematically it's probably true that performance may be much lower on the scale, if you assume that, at the margin that skill sets are fungible and performance, is sort of equal across a given group of people.
Right.
So I would say that is, that is, again, just a very practical thing. But I also think that, skill sets probably vary much more widely in practice than, skill sets vary more widely. But I think also the executive, I don't know.
But I do think they vary more widely for sure. But the executive knowledge of the skill sets makes it look way flatter than it is.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that sort of you sort of think about job titles as fungible skill sets, and that's not necessarily true in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, on sort of the other end of the spectrum, I think what is challenging for a lot of people is when there is a very clear disparity in skill sets, and that doesn't make the difference that it should, and exposure makes more of a difference. And that's what's really, really difficult, right? Because it's well, if this person is more talented or better suited for the project, they should do that. And, and a lot of times the practical reality is that someone with more exposure or more, who is set about creating a different image for themselves, actually just has more career progression. I think that this is so difficult because this is if you just in any organization, I think this is what the natural state of an organization tends towards if you're not really intentional about the culture.
Right.
And so I think and it is very, very difficult to build a culture that sort of minimizes the pie theory playing out in reality and creates much more balanced, percentages.
Yep. So here's my thought on it. We haven't talked about it before the show. I see from an observability standpoint, I see it.
Explain
even
that.
with the
when you say observability, what do you mean? Like your observations?
Sure, but just a general, I'm going to call it observability, and that let's post-analyze things and be like, yeah, that seems like the right breakdown.
Sure.
I think it's extreme, and the problem with the internet is I think it's extremely destructive for like, oh, well, if this is true, this is the percentage of time I need to allocate to each of these things, or how I need to think about it. I think that's a big problem for a lot of people.
You mean?
So I want to be successful. So say I'm already successful and I'm looking back and like, I can see how this would be true.
Yep.
But say I want to be successful and I'm going to like really, performance doesn't really matter. Image is the next, or exposure is the most important thing, and then image. Mm-hmm. I think that's a problem.
I totally agree.
And I'm relating it to the inner ring. First off, the other hard thing with frameworks that I've learned, especially when somebody's adopted this framework and this is how they think about life, is sometimes the percentages are wrong and sometimes the whole framework is wrong. We're going to talk about this with mental models later. Mm-hmm. So I think the whole framework is wrong. One, image I hate. I think it's a horrible word. I think a better word would be character. And then just making sure that your actual image is aligned with your character. Because like maybe occasionally there's things that get in the way with showing your true character.
Yep.
So like great character, but like rough around the edges. So that might be an image problem, but like for more often than not, it's a character problem, right? Of who you are.
Yep.
So I would switch that out. So call that character. Performance, and I would group character and performance as like the foundation, because I think they're both really important.
Yep.
And then I would end up with probably more than 40%, but we could call it 40%, just to make the numbers add up in the current one. And then the exposure thing, yes, because it's like you can build the best thing in the world. You can be the best person in the world. And if nobody knows about it, then the opportunities are going to be missing.
Yep.
So I'm okay with exposure being highly rated.
Yep.
But then how and why you get the exposure, I think, matters.
Totally.
And if it's only through strategic self-promotion, I think that's tough. I think it's tough to have the right performance. I mean, the right baseline performance and character, and only receive the exposure through strategic self-promotion. I think it is easier to do it right if you just find somebody else that sees the high performance and the right character and is willing to promote you. I think that's easier. I'm not saying you can't do it the other way, but I think that's easier.
Yeah. I will tie this directly back to a specific quote that's actually on the wall behind you.
Yeah.
The performance aspect, and this is something that I'm so glad we came back to this because it's a really core component of the speech, but I'll just read it off of the...
it's in the background. You might not be able to see it.
You will be one of the sound craftsmen, and other sound craftsmen will know it. Is something he talks about in the speech, where he's like, okay, forget the inner ring. Just go find something that you really love to do and find other people who really love to do it. Right. And you'll become a sound craftsman, and other sound craftsmen will know it. And one of the results of that will be friendship, right? Which is interesting because if you... That satisfies the sense of belonging and the desire for the sense of belonging that we talked about. But I will say in my experience, and there are so many different ways that this can play out, but I think about this in terms of short game and long game, which is tended to be tended to be very true in my professional career. And so what do I mean by short game? If you're playing the short game, the most expedient way to have career progression is actually to apply the pie theory pretty rigorously.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. A lot of times the way that you see that play out is someone who, or one manifestation that I've seen in this, and this is actually a hard learning curve in terms of hiring mistakes and looking back on it, is someone who has either rapidly jumped from position to position within a company or has had a pretty short tenure at multiple different companies. So in Silicon Valley world, this would be, you sort of see the like 1 year, 2 months, 1 year, 4 months, 1 year, 1 month, where it's like you hit the vesting cliff, you get, you work your way to get the title that you want, and you sort of move on, right? And not that I'm saying there's anything, I mean, there could be an argument that's like, okay, you hit your vesting cliff at a bunch of different startups, over a 10-year period, you're diversifying your portfolio.
Right, sure.
That's a different topic.
Yeah.
But I think in its worst form, you're applying the pie theory to essentially, use this framework to accomplish something that maybe or maybe does not have the level of substance that a craftsman may want. Long game is I want to get really good at something, and I'm actually willing to stick around for a long time in order to build that skill set for the sake of getting really good at something. And that's, I haven't done that perfectly, but that's generally been my disposition because I'm really interested in the work. And I think that's actually how I've come across some of the most interesting people that I've worked with and ended up on interesting teams because other people will realize, oh, this person's like getting good at this thing that they're interested in doing, right? Or at a minimum, like they're very curious about it and they're exploring it on a very deep level and thinking about it. And so, okay, that's the type of person who I want, solving these types of problems.
Right.
And so I think the ironic thing is that if you play the long game, it actually inverts this a little bit. And I think if you replace image for character, that's really the critical thing.
Right.
So if you if you become a craftsman, so let's just invert it and say, you do 60% on becoming like really, really good at something. And then,
and I think craftsman performance and character like intertwined.
Totally agree with that. So if we just make that if we just say craftsman, right?
Yeah. As a base, over half, let's call it.
Yep. You will eventually get exposure. And I think the reason that is because and again, at least in my experience, and I've seen this play out multiple times with myself and other people around, if you are a person of character who wants to be a really sound craftsman, what that translates to for the people above you in the organization is that you can be trusted.
Right.
And it is actually surprising, and I think, until I was in a position where I was forced to make judgment calls on who I could trust on what level, I didn't really appreciate how challenging it was to find someone who I trusted implicitly. There's a very small number of people.
Well, and that's part of the thing. You were mentioning the expediency, like the pie theory is probably the right thing. But if you're around for long enough, granted, I've mainly worked at startups and other smaller companies, but you're going to get a shot on something.
Yes.
Like, just because people are going to leave, things are going to change. I think it would be rare to not get a shot at all if you're somewhere multiple years.
Yep, I agree. Now, I do think there's a mentor of mine used to say, you need to have the courage to like speak up when there's an opportunity. And
that's fair. Yeah.
You can't just live in a hole and,
right.
As a hermit and get really, really good at, sharpening your tool set.
Yeah, for sure. I do think there are some people that would be craftsmen that are so extreme on the, on the hermit mindset
right.
that this is a problem, but I think there might be more people on the other side, on the other extreme.
Totally. I actually think there's, one manifestation of this is the staff engineer
Okay.
concept of a job role, where you don't climb the traditional ladder, but you're really, really good at something.
Yeah, right.
And I think that there should be more staff type roles across the organization.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to climb the management ladder and to do the dance, but you can actually just be really, really good at something,
right.
And have influence without going through the traditional management ladder channel.
Sure. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, we were texting a couple weeks ago, and in the same day, I messaged you about some AI tool that I'd found, and then you messaged me about it. I can't remember who messaged first.
I don't know. Might have been you. I don't know.
So
we could check, but it would take too long to go find it.
That's right. But we both experienced FOMO, which talking about after the
AI
fact was
FOMO.
AI FOMO, which was hilarious because let's just say that you messaged me first.
Okay.
And I think that's actually how it played out. You messaged me first, and I was like, oh, you're like, I found this really interesting app, And I was like, oh crap, am I like,
behind?
am I behind? Am I missing this? And then I think I forgot about it and ran across something that I thought was interesting that would be fun to talk about on the show. And so I sent you a message about it. And you later told me, as we were talking about prepping for the show, that you had the same FOMO experience. Which is hilarious because as we were talking about it, I was like, okay, well, there are people in our world who aren't, they don't work with AI tools every day, and they're not experimenting with all this stuff like we are every day. And so for them, we're sort of on an inner ring of like, the inside of people who are using this every day, for their jobs and to do actual work and other stuff, And so the fact that we both felt that was interesting to me. But then it also made me think about how common that probably is for people, especially because AI is moving so quickly. And if you work in tech, there can be a sense of, am I getting left behind? What skill sets do I need to build, et cetera. So I thought it'd be fun for us to just briefly talk about how do you deal with that? How do you, number one, rate your level of AI FOMO anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10, and then tell us what are just some practical things you do to mitigate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think FOMO, I don't know if by definition, but I think it comes and goes, right? I think you can end up on two ends of the spectrum. One, like, nice. Like, I found this thing. And I think this happens in a lot of areas. Like, if you're really into, like, indie music or something, it's like, wow, I found this indie music band, and they have, like, 3 followers, and they're amazing. So I think it can be that, where you're like, wow, I found this awesome tool or thing, and love the experience, love their perspective, whatever. And then on the opposite side, like you may text me, like I was telling you, there's one client meeting that I was in where I was like, they're talking about some AI tool. I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, what is, And then especially for that, since I'm in, doing consulting, and kind of in this space, it's like, I'm supposed to know.
Oh, right.
I'm
You're
supposed to know about
supposed to be
these
the
things.
expert.
Well, I'm not even like specifically. We're not specifically an AI consultant, but it's becoming that for just about everybody.
Implicitly, you definitely are.
AI, data and AI. So I think that would be the two extremes that, depending on the hour or day, you can feel like, wow, like I found this thing. I think it's amazing, revolutionary, versus the other, all on the same day or the same hour.
Yeah, totally. So what do you do to, like, when you get that feeling, do you have any strategies personally to sort of say, okay, I'm experiencing FOMO, I need to address this?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's 2 ways to respond to it. One is the natural way, I need to subscribe to more newsletters. I need to.
Oh my God. Actually,
need to-
you're going to get subscribed to them. How do I end up on all these AI newsletter lists? It's horrible.
Yeah, there are a couple good ones, but there are not very many good ones.
Yep.
But so the obvious, like, reflex answer is like, well, I need to spend more time. I need to, do more AI searches or spend more time on YouTube or whatever. But I think the real answer is I need to recognize the FOMO, because if you don't stop and recognize it, then you're absolutely, at least for me, are going to go down the road of like, well, I just need to do more research or look into this and, whatever.
Yep.
So actually recognizing that that's what's happening is a big deal. Number one.
Yep.
Probably most important.
Most
and then you can
Agreed.
choose. Then you can choose how you react to it. And I think there's a couple components practically of, if it is part of your job, a lot of people it's not, but it's kind of part of both of our jobs to be at least somewhat in the know. Like, do you have some systems and processes in place to like keep up with, and then make a practical decision of like, I'm going to modify that system or process because I really think that like I need to be more, informed.
Yep.
Or more often than not, it's I have a system and process to kind of stay up to date on this, and it's fine. It doesn't need to be adjusted. Like, with the people that I'm around, the conversations that I have, and the content that I intake, there's no adjustment necessary, which is typically the answer for me.
Totally. I love it. That's helpful.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
What about you?
I think recognizing the FOMO is a big part of it, because I don't think I frame it that way very often, which is probably that pride thing for me. It's
Right.
like, I don't have FOMO.
No,
I
right,
work in
exactly.
tech. Come on.
Right.
You know? I think there are two things that I've been doing lately. One, which I told you, I've been studying economics, like core economic principles, and trying to apply them to the AI industry, which is fascinating.
Challenging.
I'm using AI to do it. Actually, partially. But it is actually kind of fun. I turned on GPT the other day and asked it about some economic principles around things like commoditization, et cetera.
Okay, cool.
Which is cool, right? Because it's like, okay, I haven't studied economics formally in a long time.
Yeah.
But you have dynamics here where there are commoditization dynamics.
Okay, yeah.
Which we're going to record an episode on. It's like you just have a chat window and like, what does it do?
Right.
I mean, there's, the models for the average everyday person, by and large, the models perform very similarly for a very wide number of tasks.
Yes.
Right. And it's kind of cheap relatively. And so differentiation is difficult. There are just a lot of interesting economic components of that. And then, the huge portions of the industry are being heavily subsidized, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
so so anyways, the reason I say that is I think that helps me have a more objective view on AI generally, and sort of, just thinking about it objectively and understanding, okay, like commoditization, how is that going to influence things? How is the subsidization going to influence things? How are things going to change in the future, right? I mean, you actually brought up a great question the other day. You said, is it smart of me to actually try to use some tools where it is more reflective of what I believe the future cost to be, or just keep burning cursors, venture money,
right.
Which is a fascinating question. So I think that there are lots of inner rings, and we don't know about all the money that's being exchanged between these titans, of the AI industry. But I think understanding the fundamentals of a system make it way less scary, right?
Yeah, because one of the specific conversations we had was around, I can really become an expert at one of these tools, and my expertise be in the application layer.
Yep.
Of like I can wield Claude Code or Cursor or whatever with, better than whatever percentage of people.
Yep.
Good. Like there's value there. But those specific, both tools are subsidized. Cursor probably at 2 levels, like 1 at the underlying model level and 2 at the application level.
Right.
And then Claude at least
Right.
at the underlying level.
Yep.
And yeah, so the question was like, at what point is it niched so far down and so specific to the tool
Yep.
where something happens and these tools don't make sense anymore? Like, what time did I waste or expertise did I waste?
Right. Right.
And I think the conclusion is like, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, so let's think about like Photoshop. To be an absolute expert at Photoshop back in the day, I mean, that was a lot of hours.
So many hours.
A lot of keyboard shortcuts, a
Yep.
lot of hours. And with this like level of AI tooling, like the tool specific part is not that same number of hours. But, prompting and creating specs and all that, like, yeah, sure. I think you can get down into an expert Photoshop level of hours there. But the actual tool part is just not the same investment. So it's not as big a deal
Yep.
as after thinking about it more, that's kind of what I concluded.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that leads right into my second point, which is just maintaining some level of curiosity, and not in a like if you can regulate the FOMO, going in back to the craftsman point from the inner ring, just being curious, and so what that plays out. The way that plays out for me is building little side projects and other things. I mean, I work at Vercel, and so I have the benefit of these like really brilliant minds who are inventing all sorts of really cool new tooling, right? We launched a workflows framework that makes TypeScript functions durable, so you can sort of orchestrate agents more easily just as part of a TypeScript app, which is stuff like that. Super cool. There's a sandbox. I mean, there are these different tools that really, you can build all sorts of interesting AI type applications. And so I tinker with that stuff.
Right.
I'll come up with an idea, and we've talked about this. Maybe we should show some of this stuff because it'd be fun.
Yeah.
But it just demystifies it. And I think that is something that I hearken back to my high school days, where I had this amazing opportunity to take a car apart and put it back together with my dad. And he never used this language, but I've told many people the big takeaway for me was just not being afraid to take something apart.
Right.
Because, I would tell my dad, well, I'm going to take this apart. And I'm like, what if I break it? Or what if I do? I mean, I remember very distinctly, I broke a bolt off in the engine block, which is like a big...
Yeah.
That's a huge pain, because it's a big cast piece of metal, and you break a bolt off in it, and it's like it was a frame mount or something really important, and my dad just said, there's tools to solve that problem. Like, we'll get it out. Like, it's, and if we don't, then we'll drill it out and we'll just tap new threads in there, it was just, we'll figure that out. It's fine.
I have that exact same experience with a very different form factor. And that's running software in production.
Okay, tell me more.
Okay. So one of my early jobs is we were running a B2B app on half on bare metal, half on like VMware.
Okay.
In a physical data center you could drive to.
Okay.
So I remember the first time I broke production.
You broke production.
Yeah, personally.
Yeah. Yes.
And
so good.
Yeah, and we had big clients, it's B2B app, like bad thing to do. And like the pressure and the like heat to like, I need to fix this and it's my fault.
Yep.
Whereas there's still pressure and heat when it goes wrong for other reasons, right?
Yep.
Because if you're, especially at that time, like things broke and like you didn't know why and you had to figure it out.
Sure.
So that was a similar thing where you get to a point where it breaks enough times and you realize like, this is fixable. It's always fixable, and then have the confidence and skills and knowledge to go with, like, and I'm the one that, like, I can fix this. We can fix this.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Totally.